we created our database, we configure our application.properties files, and then we configure also our application port, application name, and context path. So now we start our developments, web application in Java development. So you see that the project is created. So our project is successfully here. The main class method files. So it's annotated Spring Boot application. Is that's true? And then this is the Spring application runner, run the application as a from the main class and the argument list, and they see the application. Then now we need to see the configuration class package, then the configuration files, and for this case, because we are using the Spring Boot. That's I said, if you are in the Spring Boot, you don't need to extra to configure your applications, and that's all. If you are in the Spring Boot MVC, Spring MVC, then you need to this configuration because this sublet container need to those configuration. And now is the most important part, your model part. That's I explained in the last slide, last my presentations. So you see that the user registration model class, and then address data information model class, and user registration class, user role. So you see that the user registration class is has their own attributes or properties, and then you have annotated as the entity, and then this is the table names. And so if you are don't put it the table names, and then it's automatically create the class name as a tables. So then you have see that sequences, and then that's the most important one. That's why I would like to say you. So this, because in the database level we already created the sequences. So if you see, I have a simple session implementer, call it session implementer, an object called caller, and serializer, generate methods, and then it's create. Okay, I already generated my database sequence, and now I call the sequence and select simple next interval methods in the database methods, and then it's stored as a SQL seek ID, and then set to the seek ID, and the method will do it quickly. When you call it, and then it's all injected the next sequence, and in proper way that to call it. So that means we create database, we create sequence, now we implement or call the sequences to generate our primary case. And the same thing here. So you see the sequence is created, one sequence is generated value from the user registration ID, and that's its own attribute. So this is the models that you need to discuss your project requirements or your end clients, how what they needed, what's the content or the information or attributes they needed, then you need to discuss with them, and then you can finalize your models. This is the relative discussion models of what they needed. So they needed basically the user registration ID as a primary key or entity key, and then there is a address ID. If you are address ID coming from the Google Maps or OpenStreetMap, then you can inject the address ID, and after that you can search the maps with this address ID where exactly physically or geographically it's located. So you see the user register first name, last name, middle name, and then user registration register username, and also the register user full name and password itself. And here's the one the user created. This is the most important part. You see the one-to-one, one-to-many mappings. So cascade all, that means when something happen in the parents or child, is automatically removed, and the orphan removal through options. So join tables with this I already show you how is join table look like. Is every user role is created, then user admin, this is will be the generated automatically. So that means every role when you create for each of the user, then user is linked. If a user has three roles, then you have to link with the three roles with this user ID. And his address ID, if it is the multiple address ID, you see the same thing here. And then this is the money. So if I look at my address informations, you see the address is annotated, the entity and tables, and then table names, and the same thing here. So we call the sequence what we created, and then it's injected the sequence in the properly into the model. And then this is the user role definitions. Exactly, this role has a user own ID, the primary key itself, and then user role name and user type, and then the address information, the date information when the user role is created. This is all interrelated to the yeah. So that means very simple simple models, but it effectively works because when you try to register someone or any part of the applications, if you have a really big application, still there is a user registration application. That means any web applications, there is a user registration process. Maybe there is more control or more things and more objects or more ORM models, but basically there is basically two roles is playing. There's user registration, user itself, and user physical address itself, and then the user roles, how the roles. Because I say the last presentation, the role is important to control all the users, which part of the application is allowed to see or allowed to expose those part of the application. Maybe you have a one role, very specific role. This user only see, only logged in, only this use, only for this part of the pages, or this part of the application, or this part of the features. This is the control by the role for each of the user. So you see the models. So we define our models. We did our mappings, what I'm mapping, and one-to-many mappings, or even though you can many to one, depending on the requirements. And normally what I did, just like first level to second level, and maximum third level. That means if you have one user has a role and the role has sub roles, then it's possible. But more than that, normally in the day-to-day life, in development stage, development world, we didn't follow this ones. At least the three maximum. So if you are in the combined the model such a the flexible way, is two level is enough. So that means two level means user registration and is user role, or user registration and the address information, or whatever it is, or user registration plus the user documents, what documents he tried to edit. This is the two levels informations. That means then our database will be faster, and it works properly. That's expected. And even though it will be more faster when we try to transform these models to the non-SQL models. That's another make more efficient, more functionals, to make it. Nowadays the web application, they would like to see within seconds to load the pages, not the 10 seconds to wait the one page. That's terrible. So that's why you need to think really closely how your models is, how the mappings is, and how the possibilities, the optimization with the different big backend world. So it's basically in the backend world, our application is controlled more consuming more processing time. So if you are effectively model your application, or you select your proper backend server, I mean the database server, that make more things to make your application flexible and more dynamic and more optimum way. So here we define our models. So that means, let's say our repository definitions. So we define our models. Then now we simply define our code repository for this very simple. Just extend your code operation with your respective repository. So you see our address repository, address information repository. That means this the code operation you can do with this your address information repository. So here is our user registration repository, and then user role repository. So this is the interface. Then you need to implement such operations for actions. So this is the interface. So very simple. Spring Boot make it life easy. That's why it's very so. If you define your models, then you define each of the models, all the model objects, to define your repository, and you implement those repository to what you need it to do. So here the service definition, exactly the same thing. So that means we try to include our repository, our possible repository, and we need such a functionality. So we try to save our address. We can see our all the register addresses for each of the users, and then we need to find each of the address information for each of the users, and then delete the users. And basically this is the CRUD operation, create, update, delete, and then read, or CRUD operation for those service definition. So this interface, and we define properly here as a professional way. So you see that structure I have. So model, repository, and then service is interface. Then we need to implement those interfaces, and that's the same thing here. So we need the CRUD operation for the user role, user registration, and address informations. Those things is very simple. let's have a start to our implementation, service implementation. So we define our service implementation. This you see the extension. We implements the service with service implement class. This is the convention. What I see, you see the, to follow the convention. So